Hello, everyone. So, I decided that I'm going to do the 8 Values Political Compass Test. I've already taken it once, but I think I'm going to just take the time to go through a video and go through each question and sort of talk it out with you guys. So, let's get started. Oppression by corporations is as much, if not more, a concern than oppression by governments. I'd say no. I mean, yeah, corporations can exploit people and do terrible things, but usually, I'm not an ANCAP, but usually oppression and abuse and atrocities are committed by the government, so I'll strongly disagree. 2, it's necessary for the government to protect the economy by intervening to protect citizens. I'd say at times, I think if there's massive financial collapse, like the Great Depression, doing things like massive interventions in the economy probably are a good idea. Although I would generally say that makes me sound like a Keynesian, and in the whole Keynes versus Hayek divide, I generally try and fall more on the Hayek side. So I guess there might be times, but I'll just say I'm unsure. The freer the markets, the freer the people. Economically, yes, but I think if you use examples like China or Singapore, that places that have very competitive free market economies, they can still have a very high degree of social control, so I would say that I actually disagree. Publicly funded research is more beneficial than leaving it to the market. I would say for most things, it is better to leave it to the market, because, with something like the Manhattan Project, or space travel, yeah, that does seem to be, at least right now, because of the cost, better done by the government. But generally, something like medicine or broad in technological innovations, it's better left to the market, so I'm going to strongly disagree. From each according to his ability to each according to his needs, well, that's a explicitly Marxist statement, so strongly disagree. It'd be best if social programs were abolished in favor of private charity. Well, it depends which ones. I think certain safety nets might be beneficial or useful, but broadly, I don't like the idea of the government taking care of people. I think that should be done more on local or on the private level, so I would say agree. Taxes should be increased on the rich to provide for the poor. No, not because I don't think that, as a Christian, I believe people, the wealthy, do need to give their money away, but I don't think doing it at the hands of a gun through socialism actually works. I think that they should do it on their own volition, and when the government taxes them, it's far less efficient and it's far less beneficial for the actual poor, so I would say disagree. Inheritance is a legitimate form of wealth, absolutely. I think that even though you didn't technically earn the money your parents and your grandparents made, that they absolutely have the right, and it's a good thing that they pass their wealth down onto their children. So strongly agree. Public utilities like roads should be publicly owned. I think that it seems on a practical level that this is generally how they should be run. They can be run privately, but generally I think it's more efficient, or it's better that they're done publicly. So, agree. Those with better ability to pay should receive better health care. Yep. Adequate education is the right of all people. Sure. The means of production should belong to the workers who use them. Absolutely not. Again, this is an explicitly Marxist statement, so UN should be abolished. In its current form, absolutely yes. It sort of just becomes the talking head of Western liberal nations. They keep bullying. When they keep bullying countries like Ireland into saying that they need to loosen their abortion laws and saying that abortion is a fundamental human right, and they do things like put Saudi Arabia on the head of the Human Rights Council, and also just generally because I'm vehemently anti-globalistic, I'd say I strongly agree. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. Yeah, generally. I'm not in favor of endless military intervention and foreign wars, but you do need a military to protect your own citizens, so agree. it's more important to retain our peaceful relations than to further strength. I mean, it does seem to make sense, the idea of peace through strength, which would mean I would disagree, because you need strength to maintain the peaceful relations. But I think that a lot of we've seemed to overplay our hand, or generally act like a bully to the rest of the world, or trying to force countries into in line. I don't think that's a good idea, and I think that it sort of runs counter to what the founding fathers of America said. I would still sort of say agree, but I do recognize the need for peace through strength at times. Actually, I'll go back. I'll just say neutral. Wars don't need to be justified to other countries. Well, I mean, on a Machiavellian level, if you're just going for pure practicality, of course not. But if you're actually going to look at this through morals, and I think this is probably more what it's looking for to is, like, what do you personally believe is the right thing to do in this sense? I think that, I mean, it depends. Like, war, I do believe that, if you're going to go to war, there should be a justified reason for it. But the country you're going to war with, or having to explain yourself to other countries, no, I don't actually think you need to do that. So, agree. Military spending is a waste of money. I think right now, again, this is the problem with the question, is that right now I think we are spending way too much on the military, that we don't need as massive a military as we have, and still keep our country safe, and we don't have the money to pay for it. But I don't think that, in the abstract, military spending is a bad thing. We obviously still do need a military. But I think I'll just put neutral, as I'm sure, because right now I think it is a waste of money, but not in the abstract. So I guess I'll disagree then. International aid is a waste of money. Yeah, I think we need to look after our own citizens first if we're going to be spending money on people. My nation's the best in the world. Yeah. Not the government. The government of the U.S. has done some horrible, awful things, but I think, I love the culture and the country and the history of, and, just values of America. Classic Americana. My family's lived here since even before the Revolution, so yeah, I would say agree. We've done bad things. We're not perfect, but I do still love America. Research should be conducted on an international scale. Sure. I mean, generally, yeah. I don't really see anything wrong with that, so. Government should be accountable to the international community. No. Again, I'm vehemently anti-globalists, no. Even when protesting an authoritarian government, violence isn't acceptable. I mean, it depends, because personally, for me as a Christian, I'm not, I struggle with the idea that, is violence acceptable, or should I be a pacifist? But I do think that when you have something like Nazi Germany, or just a completely totalitarian and evil regime, violent unrest in an attempt to overthrow it is acceptable. I mean, if the rebels or the people that are trying to overthrow the government become just as bad, or if they're using just as bad tactics, it's not. But if there is an explicit goal of creating a better society or eliminating a bad government, yeah, I think that is fine. My religion should be spread by force if necessary. No. Because, Christianity is not something that you should spread by force, because people should be convinced not by, having a sword or a gun pointed at them, but because they actually believe in it. And I think you can certainly spread religion by force, but I think that, especially with something like Christianity, when you do it, it sort of corrupts and ruins it. So, I disagree. My political ideology should be spread by force. Well, I mean, traditionalism, or just the values I hold that I think, our society should hold in common, they should, in the sense that if people live in the society that vehemently oppose those values and want, i.e., want to impose Sharia law, or completely overthrow every institution. I don't think they should be allowed to do that, so I would say agree. Law and order should be maintained at all costs. Yeah, if you don't have any stability, you can't really have anything else if you don't have basic stability. So, political elites are necessary as the general populace makes bad decisions. I'm not saying that I don't like democracy or that I hate the idea of individuals within a society of citizens having a voice in the government, but I think that generally in every society you're going to have elites no matter what, and I think that if we should recognize this fact and make sure that the people who are going to be the elites are going to be the people that could hold the well-being of the people in their best interests. I'm a big proponent of the old French idea of noblesse oblige, which is that the nobility or the elites have a moral responsibility to set an example for and work for the well-being of people who are lower class and the common people. So I would say agree. I don't like the elites we have now, certainly, because I think they're a bunch of globalist and progressive scumbags, but if we had an elite that did generally care about the well-being of the country, sure. A victimless crime such as drug use should not be a crime. Well, I don't think... this is the problem with the question, is that I don't think drug use is a victimless crime. Because, you can talk... There's countless stories of people whose families, whose loved ones and friends have been deeply affected, and their relationships with each other have been destroyed, and there's a thing like drunk driving or driving under the influence of drugs, which is absolutely a threat to other people, and when people get killed because of a drunk driver or somebody who is on drugs, yeah, that is not a victimless crime. And also just the whole drug trade and drug trafficking, and even when it's legal, if companies are trying to push people to use drugs, I don't think it's a victimless crime, so I strongly disagree. Terrorism is a major threat, and some civil liberties must be sacrificed to prevent it. I mean, I think there is certain safety precautions which need to be taken into account, at least in the modern age. I don't think we should we shouldn't have our airports run where there's no scanners, there's no metal detectors or anything like that. People can just walk on the plane with whatever they have on them and nobody checks them. I don't think that we should do that, but I think that we've gone overboard, and so sort of like in the process of trying to combat terrorism that threatens our freedoms, we've already sacrificed the freedoms in the first place. So I generally say I disagree. Government surveillance is necessary in the modern world. No. I mean, criminals and terrorists, sure, but no. The existence of the state is a threat to our liberty. No. Because the fact is that on the surface it actually, technically yes, because the state does enforce regulations and restrictions and rules on the populace, but the fact is that, if you look at it like this way, is that if having a state, you get to keep 80% of your freedom, but you have to sacrifice 20% of it, as opposed to trying to have an anarchist society where you get to keep 100% of your freedom, but in the end you're going to lose almost all of it. So yeah, I think the state is one of the primary ways in which we have our liberty in the first place. So strongly disagree. Regardless of political opinions, it's important to side with the country. Yeah, not the state, but the values and the culture of your country, yes. No authority should be left unquestioned. Sure. Now, I don't think this means that you shouldn't have respect for authorities in your country. I think that, there's a healthy medium here where you can question and try and improve and see if there might be reforms needed in institutions and authorities, but still have a general respect and understanding that these are the bodies that govern our society. So I would say agree. A strong hierarchical state is most efficient. Well, again, I think that a hierarchical state is sort of inevitable for any system. you're not really ever going to have a completely egalitarian or equal society. You're always going to have some form of elite, somebody who's better off than others. And I think that I'm actually going to say neutral, because you can absolutely have hierarchies which are inefficient and hierarchies which are very efficient. So it's important that the government follow the majority opinion, even if it's wrong. No. I think there are times when it's needed, like if you have something like Brexit. But I think that if it comes to people's basic rights and civil liberties, I don't care that even if 99% of the population says we should get rid of free speech, they shouldn't be allowed to get that. So, disagree. The stronger the leadership, the better. If by stronger they mean more competent, more capable, and, more able leaders, then yes. But if it means by having more power, no. I generally want power to be decentralized, so I'll say neutral. Democracy is intrinsically valuable as more than a decision-making process. I would say that I actually like it as I think it has more value that when it's not a decision-making process. I don't generally think it should be a decision-making process, but the idea that the government and that the state and that society should be beholden to the people, that the lowest, or that the common man in society is something that needs to be upheld, is a genuinely good idea. And so I would say agree. Environmental regulations are necessary. Yeah. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. No. I think that, it doesn't matter how advanced technology gets. People, if you don't have people who are moral and good actors, you're still screwed. So, strongly disagree. Children should be educated in religious and traditional values. Well, we can see what happens when they're not, so strongly agree. Irrational traditions should be abolished. No. I mean, Christmas is an irrational tradition. Most holidays, they don't, would abolishing a lot of holidays perhaps make for a more economically efficient society where there's more productivity? Yeah, but I don't think we should be sacrificing the sort of soul or what makes us our culture for that, so disagree. Religion should play a role in government. Well, for me, my thought is this: I think that there's two secularisms. There's a normal secularism, which I think even the founding fathers believed in, which I think is sort of normal and traditional understanding that this was what was part and parcel with early genuine classical liberalism, that people should be allowed to choose whatever religion they want. They should be allowed to worship the way they want to, and they shouldn't be forced or compelled to by the state or by anybody else. But I don't think that this means that, a society, that we shouldn't acknowledge that certain values, religious values, play a part in the core values of our society. And I have no problem with people citing their religious beliefs as a reason for why they want a certain policy. And I do even think that, having an allegiance to God, having your allegiance to God and Christianity or faith above the state is generally a better idea, because this sort of creates an extra level of checks and balances where, now the state is beholden to what the church says. And I'm not all that in favor of having a national church, but I think that it's probably a good thing that, governments need to be accountable and recognize that they are not actually the ultimate sovereign in the country. Like Poland recognizing recently that Jesus Christ is the king of Poland. So I will say strongly agree. Churches should be taxed the same way other institutions are taxed. No. They're not for-profit organizations. They do make money, but the thing is, first of all, taxing them would infringe on the First Amendment rights to free exercise of religion. And also that I absolutely know that if this were to be put into place, it would be abused, that they would abuse the fuck out of this. So, strongly disagree. Climate change is either not real or not man-made. I'm unsure. I don't actually know enough about it yet. I'm willing to... I think, we should still do things to help, with the environment, but I'm just not I'm not educated, or I'm not informed enough on this, so not sure. It's important that we work as a united world. No, no globalism. So nope. Society was better many years ago than it is now. Morally, yes. It's important to yes. It's important that we think in the long term beyond our lifespans. That's sort of a no-brainer. Yes. Reason is more important than maintaining our culture. I'm going to sort of say disagree. I think that, you know, we should continue our values, and I think Merchant's Struggle in his video on this, that I'm blatantly ripping off, said that is a good point, that reason often comes from our culture, so I'll disagree. Drug use should be legalized or decriminalized? No. Same-sex marriage should be legal? No, I don't think so, because the government should not be allowed to determine what marriage is. Sex outside marriage is immoral? Yes. Abortion should be prohibited? Yes. Gun ownership should be prohibited for those without a valid reason? No. I don't have to give you a reason as to why I want to own a firearm, so disagree. I support single-payer universal health care. No, it doesn't work in a country like the United States. So strongly to disagree. I support the EU. No. Communism isn't as bad as people say it is. Well, this is the problem, right? Communism isn't as bad as people say it is. It's far, far worse. But that's probably not how it's trying to be phrased here, so I'll strongly disagree. Fascism isn't as bad as people say it is. I actually sort of agree, because the fact that as terrible as a lot of the things the fascist regimes did, the quality of life, like in Nazi Germany, if you were just normal German citizen, wasn't Jewish, and you didn't really and you didn't openly challenge the system, the quality of life for you in Nazi Germany in, say, like the late 30s was probably a lot better than it would have been 10 years earlier under the Weimar Republic. So I'm not saying fascism is good. I just think that it wasn't an all-around terrible thing for everyone in society the way communism was. So capitalism isn't as bad. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it's generally, just capitalism, i.e. the free market, isn't really something that hurts people. I mean, I think it's probably lifted more people out of poverty than anything else in the history of ideas, so strongly agree. All cultures, people, worldviews, gender, sexuality, and economic class should be treated equally. No. I mean, I think that people should be still treated as individuals, but I think that, first off, when it comes to genders, I think that men and women should be treated differently because we are different. I don't think all cultures are equal, and I don't think that all worldviews are equal. I think that, when it comes to economic classes, obviously I don't think that poor people should be, singled out for being poor and given extra privileges, but, I mean, that rich people have, but that's sort of always going to happen. People with more wealth are always going to have a leg up on people who don't. And if it's a society in which they gain that wealth by perfectly legitimate means, that's not actually a bad thing. So I'm going to strongly disagree. It's important that we further our ethnic culture or economic group's goals above all others. I mean, sure, my nation first, our country's self-interest should be at the forefront of our policy, but it is difficult for ethnic because there isn't really such a thing as an ethnic American. Most white Americans are a mix of various European ancestry, and, we're not really we're not inherently a racial nation in the sense that there isn't an ethnic, there's an ethnic French group, there's an ethnic German nationality, there's an America, at least white Americans, it's largely a mix, and even African Americans are more unique because they have a substantial amount of European genetics in them. So, outside of that, I would still say strongly agree. So let's see how I did. Wow. Very capitalistic, very militaristic. very militarist, which is a lot more than I did the last time. Very much pro-statist, and societal axis, very traditional. The closest match, capitalistic fascism. I guess I'm red-pilled. I'm red-pilled as fuck. You know what's funny is the last time I did this, I got right-wing populist. So I've gone from Donald Trump to Francisco Franco. This is amazing. Oh, I have to save this. Alright, so there you have it. There's my political compass. I'm a fascist. I'm a fashy guy.